Chapter 23. The Last Light. It was lunchtime in Diagon Alley, and the streets were busy with witches and wizards shopping, talking, and drifting between storefronts. A young witch was out with her mother, looking for a pet for her first year at Hogwarts. She had not even received her letter yet, but she could hardly wait. Her mother had promised that if she cleaned the flue powder from the fireplace and swept the owlery, they would go to Magical Menagerie and get her a singing toad. The two of them walked down the street together, taking in the sights and the smell of dragon-roasted nuts. They entered the pet shop, and the moment the door closed behind them, the store went dark. A scream rang out from outside. Then another. Then another. People on the street started running past the windows at increasing speed, and Diagon Alley itself seemed to darken until the sky turned a deep purple. The mother and daughter stepped back out of the shop and looked up. Above them, the sky was swirling with dark purple mist. The woman froze with fear. Her daughter tugged at her arm, but she could not move. At the same time in Kyoto, a young witch and wizard sat down to eat at a restaurant serving Wagyu beef. The wizard was turning a juicy piece of beef on a tabletop grill while a few shrimp sizzled nearby. The witch glanced around to make sure no muggles were watching, then lifted her wand and waved it over the food. With a soft pop, the portion on the grill doubled. Her husband gave her an appreciative grin and popped a shrimp into his mouth. After dinner, they stepped outside into the warm summer night and strolled down the alley. "I love how the muggles light up the cherry blossom trees at night," the witch said. "It's magical." They both laughed at the accidental pun. Then the wizard, already feeling the sake from dinner, stopped mid-step and looked upward. He grabbed his wife's arm. She followed his gaze and gasped. A dark purple mist was swallowing the sky. They held hands and tried to apparate. Nothing happened. They exchanged a frightened look. In Marrakech, a man in a yellow turban was already trying to pull a large cloth over himself and hide beneath his market cart. Above him, the sky had become a swirling purple mass. He cried out for help and stared upward in panic, the sun reduced to a dim violet glow. On the magical island of Namarasu in Kampala, Uganda, people were trapped beneath the same purple sky. "Ekifu!" people shouted. "The mist! We can't escape!" others cried as they ran for shelter. In Central Park, a young man sat at the edge of the Cherry Hill fountain, holding hands with a young woman. At the fountain's base, a thick purple mist began to rise in a slow circle around them. The pair collapsed beside the stone edge as the mist spread outward into the park. Hermione's eyes stung with sweat. She had managed to work herself within a foot of the lever, and now she was close enough to reach it if she leaned just right. The chair scraped slowly over the uneven stone floor as she eased it into position. If she tipped over, she was finished, so she moved with careful, deliberate motions. Her hands found the handle. She pulled. The lever creaked, but it refused to move. Years of rust had jammed it in the upright position. Hermione shifted the chair and studied the base of the lever. She found the problem at once. A cotter pin was locking the bar in place. It sat too low for her to reach with her hands. Then she saw the answer. "My wand," she whispered. She pulled it from her back pocket, turned the chair, and braced herself against the lever. Tapping carefully, she ran the tip of her wand along the shaft until she felt the pin's loop. It was wide enough to catch the end of the wand. She pushed the wand into the loop and used it like a crowbar. The wood strained under her grip. She stopped, breathing hard, suddenly aware that she had stopped. Her eyes closed for a second. This wand had chosen her when she was 11. She had no choice but to trust it now. She pushed again. The bent ends of the pin straightened. She tried one more time, and the pin gave way, dropping free at last. Hermione shifted her hands back to the lever and pulled down. It moved only a quarter of the way before sticking again. She listened. Nothing. No airflow. No movement. Then she heard footsteps in the distance. "Tobias?" she whispered softly. The footsteps quickened. "Hermione?" He was close. Too close. She turned the chair sideways, shoved the lever under her arm, and threw her weight into it. The handle dropped hard. The chair went with it. And Hermione ended up pinned on her side on the floor, strapped awkwardly to the chair. Tobias rushed into the glow of the lantern, looked left, and saw her on the ground. Then the pressure shifted. A vacuum of air pulled dust and dirt from the floor around the grate. The draft became visible and audible at once, a whistling rush racing up the shaft. Tobias looked down at Hermione and said, "Useless." At the ministry, Gawain stood with his comcoin in hand, turning toward Ron and Harry. "There are more attacks right now," he said. "It's happening all over. We have to find Tobias now." At that moment, the witch guarding Rucus's cell came running into the lobby. "The elf escaped," Gawain swore under his breath. "This is out of control." Then, a fireplace in the Floo Network Hall beside the lobby erupted with a plume of dust. The sound of rushing air followed immediately after. Ron broke into a run toward the hall. "Ron," Harry shouted, "we have to find Tobias." Ron stopped at the fireplace and turned back. "No, this is Hermione. She did this to signal us. I know it." He stepped close to the back of the fireplace and spotted a metal grate in the wall. Air was already flowing through it. Ron raised his wand. "Bombarda!" The blast tore into the grate and shattered the wall around it. Stone and debris flew across the floor, leaving a hole wide enough to crawl through. Ron leaned in and looked down into a long, dark shaft. He shouted into it, but the wind roaring upward made it impossible to hear anything. Hermione! No answer. Harry came up behind him. Ron, what are you doing? The attacks are happening everywhere. Ron turned, fear and fury both in his face. Hermione's down there. I know it. I'm going to get her. Just then, a scream came from the shaft. It was Hermione. Ron cast Lumos Maxima, and a bright ball of light shot down the shaft. It fell for what felt like 10 floors before stopping and hovering near the bottom. Ron looked at Harry one last time, then stepped through the hole and dropped into the shaft. He kept his legs straight and tight, wand pointed at the light below him. Halfway down, he shouted, Arresto Momentum! The fall halted at once. Ron hung there for a second, then released the spell and dropped the last foot to the ground, landing on both feet. He looked through the grate and saw Tobias lifting Hermione and her chair back into position. Ron straightened, took one hard breath, and raised his wand toward the wall, angling it away from Hermione. Bombarda Maxima! The wall exploded in a shower of stone and dust. Tobias was knocked tumbling to the ground. Accio Chair! Ron shouted. The chair jerked free and slid toward him. Ron caught Hermione as she came with it. Tobias stood again, holding a glass vial. Stupefy! Ron yelled. The spell struck Tobias hard and sent him crashing to the floor. The vial dropped beside him and landed safely, still sealed, on the dusty ground. Harry climbed out of the shaft and saw the scene below. Ron holding Hermione and Tobias unconscious on the floor. Harry looked at Ron wide-eyed. Is he? He's just stunned, mate, Ron said. Then Rucus apparated beside Tobias. He looked around the room and met Hermione's eyes. He gave her an apologetic look, then disappeared with Tobias in an instant. Harry looked at Ron. We need to find them. Only they can stop the mist attacks. Ron was still holding Hermione. He looked up at Harry with absolute certainty. I'm not leaving Hermione again. More Aurors began climbing out of the shaft into the tunnel. Gawain came forward and looked at Harry. Is he here? Harry stared into the space where Tobias had been. They're gone, he said.